Hey guys, welcome back. Okay, so now that we are done with the WP user object, we are swiftly going to move on to WP query object, okay? And if we look at the documentation, so I'm going to bring it up, okay? And we can see that basically Codex define WP query as the object or the class which does the heavy lifting. Okay, so when a user is looking for certain information, whether that request is for your post, whether that request is for a certain page, whether it is about certain category, whatever that request is about, WP query translate that or capture that request, tell the rest of the WordPress that look, this user is looking for this information, and it goes ahead, does the heavy lifting, connects to the database, brings back the information, and that's how you then display it to the user. Okay, so internally WP query basically just plays a huge role because, as the name says, it talks to the database. It will also hydrate or populate certain other variables and functions where then you can call them later on in your code. So that's what WP query does. And if you want to read about it, obviously you can come to the codex. Again, WP query is a class defined that deals with the intricacies of the post or page, and what it will do that it will basically determine what type of query it is dealing with, and then we'll bring back that information from the database. Okay, and WP query is just massive. And I remember when I used to forget about arguments you can pass and how you can manipulate the WP query, not in every scenario I would say, but usually when you are dealing with custom post types, right? But if you go and look for WP query args, GitHub, and here is the whole object. You can always come here then and keep it as a reference, and they've done a really good job. It just explains that how you can pass different arguments, right? How you can make WP query understand that what sort of information you are looking for, it will go ahead and will bring that information. Great. So now that we've quickly gone over the WP query object, in behind the scenes what I have done, that I went ahead and I created some posts. Okay, I created a couple of categories. Okay, so I created one called cooking sage from here, and then I just went ahead and I just created a couple of posts so that we have something to look at. So now that when I go on to visit the site, so I have made one of them a sticky post. Okay, right, so now that we have some posts in the database, let's go ahead, and the first thing we can do is let's see what the WP query object is. Okay, and we don't have to pass any arguments at the moment. So if I go ahead, and so many different ways that you can basically customize it. Okay, now we will go back to the WP query arguments list here, and let's see if I can find category. It is basically you can pass the category name. That means if I come here now and I say query is equal to new WP query, right, and I'll pass in some arguments. I'll just say post type is post, and then give us the post which belong to the category name of cooking. Great. Let's just output the query. Let's see what's happening. Okay, so if I come back and yeah, okay, so that's the information we are getting now, and this is the query where it is running. Okay, so whenever you are in doubt, you can always sort of output the query and see what's going on. and it's now bringing all the information related to the category cooking. Okay, so what I could do now, that rather than just looping over all the posts, I can just ask for it that, as long as my query have posts, and while the query has posts or have posts, then initialize the post for me. So I'll just pass in here. Okay, so it will just loop through the post, and then it will get the template part, right? Okay, but what you need to remember that once you're done with the query, you have to reset the query back to where you manipulated it from, right? So you need to, I think it's post data, you can reset the query itself as well. Okay, now if we come back, and there we go. Okay, so it's going to bring us only post which is in the cooking category. What I could do, I can also ask for the sage, and it will bring up, from the sage, and then obviously the default one, uncategorized. And that should bring the hello world, I believe. Nothing. Uncategorized. Okay, so let's have a look. Oh, categories. Okay. You gotta be specific, right? You can't just type in things and expect for things to work. So there you go. So it brings in the hello world. Again, when in doubt, you can always come here and have a quick look, right? So you can even, I'm sure there's something about the post as well that you can pass in. It's huge. It's really huge. Okay, so I believe you can pass in the name as well. So that means, for example, what it means is that if I were to go, and so this is the post one. Okay, I haven't set the permalinks yet, so that's why we are getting, the actual IDs. So we are going to look into that probably in the next lesson or so. So if I click on this, okay, I'm going to get this ID. So you can basically pass in the post ID somewhere. Can we pass in, there we go, post in. That's the one we're looking for, right? So I'm just going to quickly have a look. And this one is, if you look at the left bottom of my screen, it's giving me ID, so that's 10. This one is 8. Okay, so that means I can say, give me all the posts as long as it is within the array. It is within this array that we specify, so 8 and 10. Okay, and we should really get the same result. Okay. If I were to say, let's have a quick look. And that's why, attention, if you use any sticky posts, they will also come back. That's what I thought, that why the sticky post came back, because I only asked for it for these two posts to come back. So that's good. You can also say post not in, right? So give me everything. I'm going to copy this and bring it here. Oops, sorry. Okay. So give me all the posts as long as the ID is not in this array that we have provided. And that would basically mean it's going to give us everything, but not, the Sage posts. Okay. And I can actually pass in one value, and there we go. So I hope that kind of gives you a bit of a refresher really about the WP query, but you would use it and customize it when you really need to get specific, or when you are working with custom post type. But the only thing I would say to remember is you need to reset the query back to its original form once you're done with it. Okay, great. So now let's have a quick look at the WP post object. Okay, I'm just going to bring up my Sublime. So we are done with this one, and we are going to look into the WP post. Great. Okay, so I'm just going to remove this. The WP post object or class basically contains the post, right? So it contains the post for you so that you can access it whenever you need it. Okay, there are different ways of accessing the WP post. In WordPress, there are two things. I mean, that was just a trick for me. So whenever you say the, that means do something. It's like basically, yeah, you are instructing the WordPress to do it, right? So for example, the title. But when you are not outputting something, then you just go for get. Yeah, get the title, get the post, and all that stuff. So for example, rather than calling the post, if I say get post, okay, that would basically get me the post. And if I refresh, there we go. So that's going to give me the post object and every information that I need about the object itself, the post object, right? So what I could do, that I can now access information about this object. So let me just call it WP post, and let me get the post. Okay, and let's see. So if I ask for the ID, let's see what the ID is. And it's 12. Great. So the only thing that you need to remember about the post, that if you are within the loop, so for example here we are within the loop, so I can actually go ahead and I can say WP post and get me the content. Okay, so I can go ahead and get the content from it. Okay, but if you are outside the loop, you need to stick to the best practices. You just need to then apply the filter, and within the filter you can just specify the content, right? And then you can pass in the other parameter, whatever that you need, right? So if it was a title, you would pass in the title there. If you are looping over, you don't have to apply the filter, but it's always a best practice that if you are outside the loop, then you will go ahead and you will output the information by applying a filter. Okay, again, if you have a quick look here on the WordPress Bible, right? So if I'm looking for WP post, here we go. And this is the information that you can actually get from the post object itself. And here we go. Okay. And that's the bit we just mentioned there. Okay, great. So finally that we are done with the refresher. From the next lesson, we should start looking into the Sage. And let's see how Sage is being set up. So I'll see you all guys in the next lesson.